Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Levincia Wonders going up against the Cinnabar Blazes, and these two sides are building a very young rivalry between each other because they have both taken 3 wins over each other in the short time that the PokeType League TCG has been around. But for the Levincia Wonders, they've never made it into Victory Road, and they would love nothing more than to take down the reigning champions who are currently sitting in 7th place. But with all that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the lightning decks? Will it be the fire decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this match, it is going to be the Ruins of Conflict deck for the Levincia Wonders, moving their Tapu Koko into the active spot. It is the Litten from the heel turn deck of the Cinnabar Blazes going into their active spot. But as we said, the Cinnabar Blazes are the reigning champions, having won Season A2's Champions game. It is the Togedemaru being pulled for the Wonders, and they are going to play their Professor's Research. And that Togedemaru already being in hand, we can see the Sophocles as it is the Luxray and the Shinx being pulled, and there is already a Luxio in hand for the Levincia Wonders as they get the Togedemaru and the Shinx onto the bench. The Blazers pulling the Salazzle. Now they've already got their second Salazzle in hand as they play their own Professor's Research. This is going to get them the Incineroar and the Rare Candy, and they have got their second Rare Candy and a Torracat already in hand. They're having a look at that Incineroar, who does require 3 energy. They do get a first energy onto the Litten. Having a look at Torracat, it requires 2 as well. That could determine whether or not they use that Rare Candy very quickly as the Scratch gets 20 damage onto the Tapu Koko. The Wonders pulling their own Rare Candy, and Tapu Koko does require 3 energy of its own to get that 70 damage Volt Switch off. And they do get the Luxio online, not going with the Rare Candy to get the Luxray onto the bench, but they do start setting up the Luxio here. Now Luxray also requires 3 energy, and with that Intimidating Fang ability, it reduces the damage that it takes by 20 as the Torracat is going to come online for the Cinnabar Blazes. That Claw Slash doing 50 damage. Again, it does require a second energy. They haven't gotten a second basic Pokemon, so their bench is currently empty, and they do not want to lose a game with an empty bench. 50 energy though onto the Tapu Koko as it comes back over to the Wonders, pulling their Lily, who can restore 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon, which is exactly what Luxray is, as it does come online, getting its second of 3 required energy. Does come back over to the Cinnabar Blazers, who are finally able to get a second basic Pokemon. It is their second Litten moved onto the bench with that Heat Tackle requiring 1 energy, but it is the Incineroar coming online. 150 health, the Darkest Lariat. They get 2 coin flips for each heads. It does 100 damage. This could do 0 damage. It could do 200, but we know it's going to get 100 because it gets 1 heads, and it is going to wipe Tapu Koko off the board as the Blazers take the first point in this 3-game series, where all 3 games do count towards our leaderboard. Teams get 2 victory points for each game they win, but the points they take in a match and the score or the damage that they do also counts to the overall season leaderboard, as it is the Blitzel being pulled for the Wonders. They immediately get that onto the bench, already having a Zeb Striker in hand, the Electric Ball set up for the Luxray here, so 90 damage onto the Incineroar. Incineroar can take down Luxray even with that Intimidating Fang coming into play. It is the second Torracat being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers with that Heat Tackle. It does do damage to itself, but again, it only requires 1 energy, so they do get that set up. And the Darkest Lariat, they need to get 2 to get this Luxray off the board, but they get a Tails immediately. They get 2 Tails through the Cinnabar Blazers, so it is going to do 0 damage to the Luxray, and this frees up this Ruins of Conflict deck because they do pull their second Luxio. They can get the Zeb Striker online. They do get an energy onto the Blitzel, and there it is, the Zeb Striker coming into play, but the Electro Ball from the Luxray is going to discard the Incineroar off the table. And with all that action already taking place, both sides have only taken 1 point so far. It is the Torracat being moved onto the bench. They do need another basic Pokemon though, as it is going to be the Pokeball. This will guarantee that the Blazers can pull a basic Pokemon from their deck. They play that immediately, and they get the Salandit. Keeping in mind, they do have the Salazzles in hand. And there is that Salandit being moved on to the bench, receiving its first energy here. The Torracat is going to only be able to do 20 damage to the opposing Luxray, but fortunately, thanks to that Intimidating Fang, it does 0 damage to itself as that comes into play. It is the Blitzel being pulled for the Wonders here. This Luxray can take the Torracat off with 1 Electric Ball, and the Wonders are in full control at the moment as Torracat is discarded from the table, joining Incineroar as Well, and the Ruins of Conflict deck only need one more point to take game 1 here. The Blazers still trying to hold on. They move the Salander into the active spot. They've got that big Malasada that they have pulled. Salander having 50 health. They have also pulled the leftovers. They have the Combustion Salazzle, but they've also got this Heated Poison Salazzle being moved on to the board. 30 damage, but it also poisons and burns the opposing Pokemon. So it's only going to do 10 damage thanks to that Intimidating Fang coming into play. That does bring Luxray down to 100 health. But with the poisoning and the burn, it will do an additional 30 damage. But unfortunately for the Cinnabar Blazes, as we have the Pokemon check up, that burn will not be cured. The Wonders, this Electro Ball does 90, this Electric Ball, sorry, does 90 damage. Salazzle, it only has 90 health. And this Ruins of Conflict deck is going to take game 1. But as we have our first table reset between these rival sides, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like and subscribe so don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG. It is going to be the Wonders flipping heads, so they are going first here in game 2 with their Lost Thunder deck. We can see the Xurkitree, but it is the Joltik going into the active spot, and they do have both Galvantulas in hand and a Beast Ball. It will be going up against the Crimson Invasion deck of the Cinnabar Blazes, and they've got the Blacephalon full art that they earned being the champions of this season. The Growlithe going into the active spot, the Blacephalon going onto the bench, and the Torkoal joining it as well. Now they've also got the X-Speed and the Arcanine in hand, but here we go, game 2 between the Wonders and the Blazers. It will be Joltik going up against Growlithe here. And it is the Oricorio being pulled for the Levincia Wonders. With that safeguard, unfortunately, it cannot capitalize against EX Pokemon. There are no EX Pokemon permitted in the PokeType League TCG, except for one exception, and that is when the Holon Allies play. So if you ever want to see that, check out the Rainbow decks. As the big Malasada is pulled for the Cinnabar Blazes, a first energy onto the Growlithe. It does require 2 for that combustion that does 30 damage. Joltik only has 40 health as the Wonders pull their Professor's Research. They are able to get another 2 cards. They get the Zeraora and they get the leftovers as well. Now Joltik only requires 1 energy for that Jolt that does 10 damage, but it can paralyze the opposing Pokemon if they're successful in flipping their heads. However, there is that Galvantula in hand that does require 2 energy. The Wonders thinking about how they want to approach this. They keep the Zeraora in hand and they're going with the Jolt, 10 damage as we said onto the Growlithe. They need to flip the heads though. And they get the tails. This is fantastic for the Blazers. They can get this damage onto the Joltik as it is the second Torkoal being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazers. And that Arcanine comes online. They're not going to go with the offense from the Growlithe. Instead, they're going to start setting up the Arcanine, getting its second energy. The Fire Main does do 80 damage. It comes back over to the Wonders who pull their Pokeball here. So they're going to guarantee themselves a basic Pokemon. And it is the second Joltik. And again, they have got that second Galvantula already in hand. And speaking of Galvantula, it is now online. This Electric Shock does 70 damage. It is guaranteed to paralyze the Arcanine, but they have to discard both Lightning Energy that are attached to the Galvantula. But before going with that, they do move the Joltik onto the bench, and here it is, the Electric Shock, 70 damage onto the Arcanine, bringing it down to only 50 health. They need to shake off this paralysis for the Arcanine to get it on the offensive, as those 2 energy were discarded from the Galvantula, and there it is, the big Malasada coming into play, guaranteed to cure Arcanine of that status condition and restoring 10 health in the process, and it does require this additional energy. The Fire Main, 80 damage, Galvantula, 80 health. The Blazers taking the first point here in game 2, but they do not want to lose the lead. They don't want to drop the series in the first 2 games. They want to try and take it to game 3. But as we said, regardless, that game still happens and it still counts towards the leaderboard. You just don't want to go out with less points as the Joltik moves into the active spot. The Zeraora, the second one, being pulled, immediately going on to the bench. The Joltik receives the single energy. They're trying to get this Arcanine paralyzed again. They're trying to go for the coin flip here to keep themselves in the game and get this Arcanine off the board, but they get the tails. This is fantastic for the Blazers as they do pull the Repel. This can be used to get a different active Pokemon onto the active a different basic Pokemon into the active spot, but they're not going to use that. They get an energy onto the Torkoal, and the Joltik is discarded from the board. The Crimson Invasion deck only needs 1 more point to take game 2, as the Wonders are going to move the Xurkitree into the active spot. It requires 3 energy. They pull the Guzma here. Now, they definitely want the Lusamine to try and get those 2 energy out of the discard pile onto the Xurkitree here. Again, looking through their hand as they've just placed their first energy onto the circuitry. They can't use the Beast Wall because it can only be played when the opposing side have not taken any points. It is the leftovers being pulled for the Cinnabar Blazes here. They are going to put that on to the Arcanine here. It will be able to restore 10 health at the end of every turn of the Blazes. They get a first energy onto the Blacephalon and another Fire Main 80 damage onto the circuitry. There's that leftovers coming into play. And the Wonders, they pull their Lucamine. They're going to be able to get 2 energy here onto the circuitry, getting them from the discard pile. It will be able to go for the Electronica. It does leave the opposing Pokemon confused, but Arcanine only has 60 health remaining, which means they will be able to get the point. They also get an energy onto the Zeraora, the leftovers onto the circuitry. They're not going to play the Guzma because they don't need to worry about the leftovers on the Arcanine because that will go to the discard pile with it. And the Wonders are now trying to bring it back from a 2-0 deficit. And it is the Torkoal being moved into the active spot. It does have to discard an energy when it goes for this flamethrower here. That does do 70 damage, which means this is fantastic for the Blazes because Circuitry only has 30 health remaining, which means the Wonders will not be coming back from this deficit because this Crimson Invasion deck will take game 2 over the Lost Thunder deck. And with our final table reset, we will be going into our Game 3 decider between these two teams as they cannot be separated here. It is the Wonders again going first, and their last remaining deck is the Blush Mountain deck. We can see the Helioptile and the Alolan Geodude in hand, plus the Alolan Golem. No rare candy in sight, but they go with the Helioptile into the active spot, the Geodude on the bench. The Blazes, they are playing their Walla Volcano deck with the Oricorio going into the active spot as their only Pokemon in hand. They have got the Professor's Research, however. And here we go, our Game 3 decider. The Wonders going first, and they draw the Heliolisk, who only requires 1 energy. They won't be able to evolve it until their next turn, but that's when they can start generating energy as well. The Talonflame has been pulled for the Blazers. We can see the rare candy in hand, so they want that Fletchling. They get the leftovers, and there it is, the Fletchling being pulled as well. Who's ever thought that a commentator's curse was a real thing? As the Fletchling goes onto the bench, the Oricorio receives its first of 2 required energy, and they do attach the Poison Barb to it as well, trying to make the Wonders reluctant to go on the offensive here. But it does come back over to this Blush Mountain deck, who do pull their own Lily. And they are looking at that Heliolisk, and they are going to get it online here. That rear kick does 40 damage. Oricorio has 70 health here, but it is set up and ready to go. They've also got that Electrical Cord Pokemon tool as well as the leftovers, but it is the Electrical Cord going onto the Heliolisk. Now, if Heliolisk has 1 or 2 energy, it does allow that energy to go to a benched Pokemon if it were to be discarded. But there is that Poison Barb coming into play. Oricorio has 30 health remaining. It is the Fletchinder being pulled for the Blazers as well. Fletchinder only requires 1 energy with this steady fire breathing, but they still need to get an energy onto the Oricorio if they want to go on the offensive with it. But instead, they're setting up the Fletchinder, knowing that they've got the Talonflame in hand. It only requires 2 energy to get that 90 damage off. They're willing to give up the point, give up the Oricorio. It is their second Heliolisk being pulled for the Wonders, who can start trying to prep this Alolan Golem, but they still need the Alolan Graveler as well, or a rare candy. But the rear kick is going to get Oricorio discarded from the table as the Wonders, for the first time in this series, have taken the first point in a game. Is going to be that Fletchinder though moved into the active spot for the Blazers. They do have to contend that it is weak to the lightning types, however, as the second Fletchinder is pulled for the Blazers. They get the Talonflame onto the board, 120 health. Again, as we said, it is weak to the lightning types, but it does get that second energy. This Fire Wing, 90 damage, is going to wipe the Heliolisk off the board, and immediately the Blazers are back in this. Now, Geodude only has 70 health. It cannot outlast the hit from the Talonflame, but thanks to that Electrical Cord, Geodude does receive an energy here, so it can immediately go on the offensive, and it can get a third energy with this Knuckle Punch. It does 40 damage, and they do pull the Alolan Graveler, who does require 3 energy, but with its heavy impact, it does 60 plus the weakness coming into play. It will do 80 damage to Talonflame, and it can outlast a hit, having that 110 health, 80 damage there onto the Talonflame. The Blazers need to pull a basic Pokemon. They get the second Fletchling. They've already got the Fletchinder in hand. They will be able to get an energy onto it here as well. they surely must be hoping that they can pull a Talonflame, as they do have the Lily in hand. It will be able to restore 60 health, which means it does keep Talonflame out of discard range from the Graveler, but they don't know that there is a Golem in hand there for the Wonders. It is the Fire Wing, 90 damage onto the Graveler, leaving it with only 20 health remaining. The Wonders, they have pulled their Emolga, and the Golem is ready to go. The Super Zap Cannon, 150 damage, plus the weakness. And we have to keep in mind, there is the Sophocles in this deck as well that adds an additional 30 damage that this Golem can do, but it does have to discard 2 energy to do this. But they play their own Lily, so they do restore 60 health for the Golem, bringing it back up to 130 health. And there it is, the leftovers also being attached here. That does allow Golem to restore 10 health at the end of every turn that the Wonders take. And there's Super Zap Cannon, 170 damage, wiping Talonflame off the board. The Wonders need 1 more point to take this series. The Blazes trying to bring it back. The 2 energy were discarded from the Golem. The Fletchling in the active spot. There's the leftovers, that 10 health restored for the Golem, back up to 140 health. And it is the Kiawe being pulled for the Blazes. That would allow them to get 2 energy onto a Turtonator who is in that deck, but if they play that, they end their turn immediately. Fletchinder is on the board with this steady fire breathing, 30 damage. It will bring a Alolan Golem down to 110 health. This will free up the Wonders to get a first energy onto the Golem. They have pulled their rare candy as well, and there it is, a 3rd energy now onto the Golem. It still requires 1 more. There is the leftovers, restoring 10 more health as the Blazers, they pull their Guzma. This is not good here for our reigning champions. They play the Guzma. That will get the leftovers discarded from the Golem, but the most they can do, the most that the Blazers can do, is get 30 damage onto this Alolan Golem with the steady fire breathing. Whereas for the Wonders, this frees them up. They can get a 4th energy for the Super Zapkin, and they have pulled the Sophocles, the 4th energy onto the Golem. The Sophocles allows this Super Zap Cannon to do 180 damage, but not just that, the weakness will come into play. So it is 200 damage, wiping this Fletchinder clean off the board as the Blush Mountain deck does take game 3, and the Wonders take the victory over the Blazers in impressive fashion. Now they do stay in 9th place, but next round they will be going up against the Levincia Constrictors, whereas for the Cinnabar Blazes in 4th place, next round they're going up against the other team to have won a championship here in the PokeType League TCG, the Melamela Rumbles. But until then, Nidorinas and Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what cards you pulled today, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.